Welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have on Bill Bruford. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, Sean. Good to meet you.
I'm very pleased to have you on the show. You have been in every major band in the progressive world. You continue to keep, doing things in the music world. But today you have a box set out that I was lucky enough to get early and check it out. So that's the first thing we're going to hit on. I want to show this to people. It's beautifully done. I want to talk about the packaging. It's got a book, hardcover.
Not bad, huh?
Beautiful pictures in it. You've totally explain the breakdown of how you have the CDs.
I have indeed, yeah. I love writing. Writing's one of my great pleasures.
And it's actually broken down and written in a very succinct way. We can talk about in a second. And it actually even comes a nice little poster too.
Oh, what more could you possibly want?
Right.
Look at that.
Look out, Teen Beat Magazine. This is pretty awesome. Who did the photographs? They're pretty cool.
Well, a guy called Dave McKean, who has been doing work for me for the last 7, 8, 9, or maybe a dozen albums now, and the last box set, and he's established a real kind of a real flow in the artwork, joining the various Earthworks bands together. So Dave was the logical choice for this project.
They're beautiful. It's really done really well. Packaging is done. So 70 songs in this.
There are indeed 70 songs. Not all of them have lyrics, but you guys call them songs.
Instrumental pieces. They got songs, I guess, you guys. So the breaking down, this is of all of your career. How did you go about selecting the best things that would represent you? Because there's a lot of different levels in picking out.
It was tricky. I mean, there's a number of parameters. First of all, you got 6 CDs.
Yeah.
But 6 CDs are not going to run forever. That's going to break down to roughly 70 tracks. But somebody like me has been on a lot more than that. So what are you going to pick? So I suppose one of your first decisions is, are you going to pick a lot of tracks from very few artists, or very few tracks from a lot of artists?
Right.
That's the way to look at it. And in the end, we've got a balance of about 70 tracks from 21 different ensembles that I'm on. Obviously, some were on. I was in some bands for a lot longer than others.
Yeah.
So the longest band I was in was King Crimson. So they get, in a way, the longest slice, some 15, 16 tracks. Yes, I wasn't in for very long, and of course their tracks are very long anyway. So there's about 3 of them. Earthworks, of course, have been running for about 20 years now. So there's plenty of Earthworks, and lots of other material from guys for whom I worked as a kind of special guest or studio musician. So it's not really broken into, it's not necessarily chronological.
No.
It's broken more into themes, really. Musicians play under different guises and circumstances often. Sometimes you're playing for people as a special guest, or you could be playing with others collaboratively in sort of progressive rock groups. You could be performing as a leader. For example, you could be performing without a leader at all. So musicians often do that, and you need to know what circumstance it is that you're in, so you can find where the power structure
your position.
Is. Yeah, exactly. So it's broken, the box is broken down into that kind of arrangement.
I said, well, I love the way it's broken down, and you'd say it much better than I would. The other thing is, you have the pleasure of, and which not a lot of artists do, of being the generation that you can see all of the influences of all the work you've done from the newer artists, generationally, which has got to be kind of cool, where it's not the short period where it's a copycat of a King Crimson band, or a Yes band or Earthworks, some kind of jazz thing, like it's many years past, where you can see people grew up listening to it. It's just infused in their minds.
Yeah, I suppose so. I was in a way luckier because there were fewer influences and fewer records, less music had been done. So when I was a kid, there were about 3 rhythms, and you could take down one from the shelf. You could take down a shuffle, it's kind of thing, a swing beat of some sort, and a rock beat. And that was the extent of drumming. But if you look now to musical influences that people have, it's just huge. They can they can range all the way from the 1940s through to the 2020s, and that's a long time. So there's a huge body of work now for young people to feast on if they want to. But here's the weird thing, and it's kind of odd. When you speak to a lot of young guys, they haven't heard very much music. They tend to listen in a very narrow bandwidth.
I agree. Very linear.
You know, if you go to young people, 16, 17-year-olds and stuff, say, oh, you want to be a drummer? That's interesting. Who's your influences? You know, of course, they'll say John Bonham or something. But he might say, well, you know, my influence is Limp Bizkit or something. You know what I mean? It's a single band. And I'm going, well, what about Spanish music from the 1950s? What about, you know, what about heavy metal? What about jazz? You know, because all this stuff is available. And I'm always surprised and encourage young people, if I can, to listen as broadly as they can, backwards in time and forwards in time, you know.
I agree. One thing I say all the time, I'm like, it's always about a deep dive. If you hear your favorite artist likes a musician, who do they like? And then you follow that trail.
Yeah, indeed. And that's absolutely
an education that you really need.
Yeah. And there's a big intergenerational thing about this box set, you know, that there's this huge divide of people, you know, about 40, 45. I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm older than that. So I'm the old analog guys, you know.
Yeah.
Had to make the digital jump.
Yep.
And everybody below 40, or 40, 45 is, you know, in the new world of computers and so forth. And generally speaking, when I meet the young guys, they have very little knowledge of the sort of thing that we older guys have done. However, when they hear it, they really love it. So part of me is intrigued in trying to get young people to listen to some of this stuff of my colleagues and on this kind of box set, and try to pass some of the music down to the next generation behind us. Excuse me.
Well, I think this is the way you select what you select is a very broad for people. There's a lot somebody jump into. Now, I got this a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, and in knowing a lot of your work already, it's still a lot to keep consuming, because I listen to music and I always hear something new every time, and I'm always picking it apart. So, and I actually learned to record in analog, so I go back. But even I've discovered different things or had a different appreciation for other pieces of projects I didn't know you did.
Yeah,
which is fantastic to always keep rediscovering things from an artist that you've been listening to forever.
Yeah, it is interesting.
It's a gift.
It? Oh, did he play on that as well? Oh, that's weird.
He's everywhere. Didn't he sleep at all? Bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And was that Bill Bruford playing the drums there? That's always, you know, nice when people are surprised, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to Alan Hallsworth thing and I'm like, oh, Bill's on that. Like, it's like, you didn't know just because there's so much. And because of like media and streaming, that's the other thing people don't understand, the credits of no one's holding something and looking at it.
Oh, that's interesting.
You're your player, so you're not seeing all the musicians. And at this point, it can escape me at times because I have to stop and scroll it up and find it in my eyesight. And you know,
isn't that interesting? I hadn't thought of that. Streaming means you just go straight to the track title and maybe the artist, but everybody else. Right. Whereas in my generation, of course, we loved finding out who the second bass player was. You know,
I go to GPS here with the vinyl, and I got to open it. I got all kinds of. It's an experience. Of course. It's an adventure. You know. But with this, I think it can lead a lot of things to a lot of people. Like I can hear bands like Primus have obviously been very influenced by King Crimson.
Yeah, well, throughout the book, and it is a book, or it's not even liner notes anymore. It's
it's a book.
A 52-page book. There's quite a lot of illustrations, I beg your pardon, quotations from other drummers.
Yep.
You know, about what it is the music did to them, which is really nice. Some of them are quite young, of course, which is nice.
But it's nice. It's different ages, though. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everybody will have a chance of. Oh, I know that one, even if they don't know everybody from the different generations. It's a nice slice into it.
Sure. And sometimes the commentary that I've offered gets quite detailed, down to, you know, why don't you listen here at this minute and this second through to that minute and that second, and over these 10 seconds you'll hear something. You know, I can comment on things for you, which is quite good fun, I think. You know,
it's incredible. I mean,
there's a little, you know, it's nice for musicians, for example, to occasionally play things they'd never heard themselves play before, be totally unaware that legs and arms are going where they're going, and you think, where did that come from? You know, but you might say to me, well, where could you point that out to on the box set? And I'd say, we'll go to the track, The Sound of Surprise, and between this, this is in the text, between this number and that number, and you'll hear me playing something I've never ever heard before, not from anybody else, or from particularly not from me. So I find those moments encouraging as a musician. Wow, I can do, I can play some stuff off the back of my head, which is nice, for example.
You're an exciting musician in a way. You're from the generation of musicians too. Like, actually talk about quotes. Robert Fripp actually talks about you're willing to throw everything away to go on to something new, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And to me, it feels like, and let me, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're really about the journey and not so much about the ending.
Totally. It's the being of a musician. Yeah. How it all ends up might be beyond your control.
Right.
But I think that's what you're paying me to do, is to do interesting things on a drum set that are not necessarily the same thing next week that you heard last week. And
right.
Maybe not even the same thing that in Cleveland that you heard in Cincinnati, that the musician is moving forward and he's inviting the listener to come on the journey with him. And so he might start in yes, and he's going to go through King Crimson. There'll be more of a jazz thing here. And then, and this roller coaster ride of 41
right.
years or so, I think it's entertained the heck out of me. And if it's entertaining the heck out of me, it might well have a chance of entertaining you too. Or put that the other way around. If it's not doing anything for me, I swear it's not going to do anything for you. You see what I mean?
I get that. I mean, I think for the deep listeners, some people appreciate things on a different level. I think if type of listeners, the ones that are going to hear it, maybe not pick it up on streaming, or people like me that will have the box set, will have it and kind of deep dive, and then the middle fans.
Okay.
To that though, like I just want to hit on it because there's so much to talk about. I want to do everything, but in disc 1 and 2, you talk about being the collaborator, and those are the bands you have, like Yes and King Crimson, Anderson, Buford, Wakeman, and Howe. All those bigger projects a lot of people know.
Yeah.
And one of the things with that, and then also you work with a lot of other people, I think being a songwriter, and you talk about writing songs and learning to write songs and being a part of a band and being a leader and different things. But the challenges, the dynamics of songwriting and the relationships are all very important in each of the bands and how the songs come out. Like how you came up with Heart of Sunrise. That is, there's nothing like that when that came out. Like, and the dynamics of the band to put that together is always amazing to me, because Yes, has strong personalities and King Crimson does, but how do you find your way through to do that?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and it's subtle. It's a group of musicians, all of whom have got strong ideas.
Oh yeah.
And right there is a big question of luck. Are these guys going to get on well? Are they even talking from the same ballpark or not? Do they understand each other? We were from very different musical backgrounds, and that's quite good. Yes, of course, it'll be very strange. Why are you playing that there? Because you're not from my background. But you'll say, well, from my background, we do it that way. And you rather than run out the room and say, well, that's no good, this group will never work. It's going to be a harder slog, but you'll get something a bit different. Let's say you're another British group, Black Sabbath, and they're all born in the same street in Birmingham, and they all speak exactly the same language, went to the same school, and ate and drank the same bread, cheese, and beer. That's all okay, that's fine, but they're all likely to think very similar. Whereas we had, musicians who were from the Royal Academy of Music, and also who were milkmen in the previous life, who were laboring men, so you have a huge range of technical ability and musical ability within this particular group of people, let alone their worldview and their view of life. So eventually you've got to find some common ground. And you do that by playing standards. We were a covers band. Yes was a covers band when we started. We played everybody else's songs. And then we thought, oh, this is pretty easy. We could extend this bit, or we could reduce that bit, or play it backwards, or double the length of this and put that melody in the bass or something. And we started to fiddle around with those songs, like the Beatles songs and stuff that we did. And then pretty soon after that, one step later, you're doing a Heart of the Sunrise, where you've decided you're doing the whole thing yourself by that point. You've just extended things. So it was incremental over 3 or 4 years. We didn't just start with that particular song. It took a little while. So record companies back in the 70s had a bit of time. You know, we produced two records, first of all, didn't make a dime. We were down to our last $50. And 3 albums in, we were down to no money whatsoever. So it was touch and go as to whether Yes ever just got through the gate, you know, to make a good band.
But in doing it though, you guys did create, you know, luckily there are record companies that would nurture you back then. That's not going to happen nowadays.
Yeah.
And that could be a reason why there's going to be a lot of weird artists coming out in the future, because nobody will have that growth period. You know, it'll be different. You know, it's a new landscape.
Indeed, completely.
But to that point though, I mean, you guys are all very different personalities. And at what point is it as an artist going to say, let's try your idea over mine, or mine's right? And that's where you get the, you know, because part of being, you know, a good songwriter, you can sacrifice and trade off, or you know your way's the best. And part of being an artist is having, you know, being strong, you know, and facing adversity. And then if you're your own band, you're almost may have to battle out sometimes, or that's where you give in, you know, and that's where the collaborations is your challenge.
All interpersonal relationships.
Right.
Yeah. You know, a certain amount of horse trading. You know, me and the bass player, we really like this, and we're going to do it this way, whatever you think the song is. You know, sometimes you're going to get very assertive, sometimes you're going to give way. And it's a collaborative endeavor, and everybody signs up to the idea that if you accommodate others, their idea may be just as good as yours, you know. And anyway, there'll be another song coming up soon, and you could have a go with that instead.
Right. And then you end up with King Crimson and with Robert being the strong leader of that band. And but sometimes in certain situations the leader is good, and some bands need a leader and some bands don't. You know, it just depends. You've been in every kind of band where you've been part of the team, you've had a leader, you've been the leader, you've been a collaboration of everybody where everybody's a leader.
All variations.
And that's exciting as an artist, I'm sure. I mean,
no 2 days are the same in the office. That's for sure.
Is there one you favor a little bit more, maybe? Looking back, I mean, like
well, I mean, I've been a different musician in different times. When I was young, I wouldn't have been able to improvise or play a concert all the way through without any prepared music whatsoever, which is really scary. I tell you, that's a terrifying thing to do. I wouldn't have been able to do that when I was 25, but at 65, I knew what I was doing. I could do that. So you grow into whatever it is you want to grow into, and you mature, I think. And it's nice. It's great. That's what the journey is, as you say.
It is. You play with so many people. Is there been a difference, like with you having worked with so many different people? You've played with so many great guitar players, obviously, you know, in Yes and King Crimson, but you've also, you know, with Aldemir, you've done Al Holdsworth in UK and other projects. You even did a jam with Eddie Van Halen. I mean,
I'm not sure I did. Isn't that a kind of? I don't think I've ever played with Eddie Van Halen.
There was a link on there that says it was you and the drummer, and I couldn't see the drummer up close, and it looks like it was you at a jam.
Are you been looking at the internet again, for God's sake?
I heard it's all real.
Well, no, I'm here to tell you, I don't believe I've ever played with Eddie Van Halen. Bless him.
Okay. It's like a Les Paul jam or something that actually has you listed on it, and you can't get a close-up shot of the drummer, and it's everybody else, and you've played with so many people. It came into my feed.
Well, it's possible I'm wrong, but
I could be wrong.
Anyway, I play with a lot of people. I know what you mean, and they're all different. They're all different human beings. I'm all about people rather than the instrument. You know, I get on well with most people, but if I feel that the guy I'm talking to is on the same wavelength musically, it doesn't really matter so much what instrument he plays.
Right.
You know, we'll take whatever instrument you play, so long as we're on the right thing, I think. And look at the difference in the guitar players too. The difference between Holdsworth and Fripp is huge. Between Steve Howe and Aldemir, huge. Again, these are the way these individuals approach the same instrument, basically. Adrian Belew, there's another great guitar player, but he's much more about noise and texture and sound. Aldemir is all about notes. So, you know, I mean, there's people make their choices. And it's just a privilege to play, or to be lucky enough to play with so many great people, I think. Interesting, not great necessarily, interesting people. wow, I never thought the guitar could be played like that. You know, you go, and you're rather hoping that they will be saying the same thing about you. Wow, I never really thought that drums could do that, or would want to do that, or could make that thing that you're doing could make that sound good. I would never have thought that would go well with my guitar playing. You know, that kind of way of looking at things. And if you can get musicians to say that about you, you'll always be wanted. You know, they'll give you a call. Hey, come and make me sound great.
And it's the thing is with you, your style's changed a little bit, but with all these songs, like listening to it collectively, everything comes across as the drum is part of the team. Because, like, you know, there are times like with heavy metal in certain groups that like the drums were in the back and bass was here, and then it was focused on this and this.
Yeah.
But the thing that can goes through all of your songs is the drum has its own voice. It's not the back. It's part of the ensemble.
It really is. It really is. And you would hope, I would hope, that none of the drumming on this track is transferable to that track.
No.
Why? Because the music's entirely different. So the drums are entirely different for very good musical reasons. Over there, they were loud and played with sticks. And over here, they're very quiet and they play with brushes or fingers or something, you know, whatever it is. But every time you're hoping to change the drumscape so that there's an endless variety of things. You think, God, is that still the same guy playing? That song is the same, the guy 4 CDs earlier? And you're looking for a breadth of the instrument to try to show people how wonderful the instrument it is and how powerful.
I can't find a track on the 70 that even are similar. I couldn't say, oh, that sounds like this one. There's nothing that your drumming sounds the same on at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's very telling.
Yeah.
You also went through a phase where you were doing you were a big proponent of doing electric drums and mixing it.
Oh, electronic even.
Yeah, very exciting and very cool. You want to lead people doing that. Can we touch on that a little bit too? Because that actually plays into a lot of your other years. You know, when you went back to King Crimson and you started doing Earthworks and everything else. You know, you're really experimenting and reaching out a little different. Always leading.
Yes, trying to. And I just jumped on electronic drums. I mean, I thought there was a whole possibility they'd help me sound different. Mm-hmm. You know, I might not sound like the next guy. I'm always trying to avoid sounding like the next guy. Never wanted to sound like John Bonham at all. You know what I mean? Right. So I'm steering in the opposite direction, paddling in the opposite direction as fast as I can. I don't want to sound like that. So along come these electronic drums, and they were rough work. I mean, they were unreliable. You couldn't really understand it. Added to which, they had the world's worst promotional campaign you could ever believe.
Did they?
Which was broadly along the lines of, hey, drummers, burn your drum kit. You'll never need an acoustic drum kit again. The future is here. That kind of thing. It was just so patently stupid. So they got a bad rep. But again, I don't mind if I see people leaving my area. That's fine. Leave me with these things. Let me settle with these. And I went through various incarnations over about 10, 20 years maybe of these electronic drums. Everything was always physical. I always, you know, you're programming, but then you're striking the sounds out of the pads.
Yeah.
To get things to do differently, different sounds, of course. And then I got through sampling and assigning samples to different areas of the pad. So we could get really pretty sophisticated. And a lot of the time in Earthworks, most people thought that the keyboard player was playing many of the parts because they did come from the keyboard, but they were struck from a drummer's point of view.
Triggering them, yeah.
Yeah, triggering them. So classically, it was Waiting Man with King Crimson was a lot like that. Stromboli Kicks from Earthworks. I think that's on the CD, I think.
Yeah.
Candles Still Flicker in Romania's Dark is
I like that one.
The drummer. It's a very slow, very melancholy ballad. Mm-hmm. Is the drummer playing electronic drums, etc., etc. So the drummer by this point has got a hybrid drum kit, you know, half electronic, half acoustic, and a vast range of color and power that he can produce as and when necessary, or withhold as necessary.
I think added to your own, not mystery, but like a lot of people couldn't copy you, like even a cover band, because you said that, you know, because not everyone would have that same setup you would have because you'd have a mixture
Yeah.
or a hybrid. And you've also said, and this is fantastic, you can probably explain it more. You didn't build a drum set and then build your songs around your cool looking drum set. You had a song and you built your drum set to go with the music.
In a way, yes. Yeah, this is the kind of music we're going to do. So we obviously we don't need those kind of drums. You know, we don't need a set of timpani. We're going to be playing this kind of music. You know, so it's a simple choice. Drummers can't bring everything to the gig, but what you do bring is going to color the music a lot.
Right.
And I was always interested in bringing interesting and unusual things to the gig. Although, of course, in jazz, that's tough.
Right.
You know, because of transport costs and logistics.
Hey, you really, I mean, I guess we consider yourself more of a prog rock, but I guess you touch everything with the fusion, and you do some rock, and there's a lot of jazz, you know, and all your bands that you really can't classify it as one thing. I don't think. I mean,
no, I have. You know, if there was an edict that came from the White House tomorrow, which said nobody in the United States is allowed to use the word rock or jazz again, I think it'd be great. You know, because both phrases are useless to me. They just and sitting on the borderline between the two is where I've spent a lot of time. I like that. Is this jazz or is it rock? I don't know. You know, you tell me.
You know, I couldn't tell you. I think it's more adventurous. I'm not one to label stuff generally. I mean, sometimes it's clearly in a genre, but for you, I guess progressive would only mean, instead of the insurance company, it's more of just you're progressing and moving forward. You're adventurous. You're not locking into a sound, I guess. You know.
Yeah, of course. It was a rhetorical question. I didn't mean you to answer.
No, that's okay. But to me, I wanted to put that there. I think with all these artists you've worked with and collaborated with, and a lot of them, the band will break up, but then you'll leave and you go back. And historically, you know, a lot of bands, once you break up, you don't get back together with them, especially with strong personalities. So it's interesting. The music, I think the music has always spoken more to all of you guys and all your different projects than anything, really.
Yeah, that's perfectly true. And I, you know, the guys I work with, particularly the Europeans, are more guided, I think, by the direction that the music is taking them, rather than the direction the record company is taking them. So, you know, we would follow our own hearts, really. And, you know, I mean, one of the main reasons the Beatles broke up was because they toured themselves to death, you know, and with the wrong equipment. They couldn't hear themselves play, and it was bloody miserable. And fairly early on, particularly in King Crimson, we fell into sort of 3 years and 4 albums together, and then take a 7-year break.
Yeah.
Nobody knew that was going to happen, but that sort of did happen a bit.
Yeah.
Two or three times. And that sort of makes sense, you know. And King Crimson sort of became a bit like a tool that you got down off the garden shed to use in music, if and when you felt it was a worthwhile tool to use. Was it the right tool to use, you know? And there were great times in the beginning of the 80s, for example, when King Crimson was full of new ideas and well, you could do all kinds of things in music, you know. It's a very open time, great time to get King Crimson out to work again, you know, give it some new tools, give it rolling guitar synthesizers, Simmons electronic drums, and I don't know, fuzz boxes and God knows what, and let it get to work with those tools in an open sense, which is really nice.
And those sounds didn't actually make them sound like an 80s band. King Crimson sound like a typical 80s band either, even though they were using the same tools. True.
You can use plenty of tools differently. That's right.
I mean, and that's a good example that artists don't always have to just use the same thing. And I actually think a lot of your bands were almost like your paintbrushes for you. You know,
I think so. I think so. I agree. And you know, the record industry, but also the musical instrument industry, is all about hegemony. It's all about knocking everything together, squashing everything together. So we all play the same drum set. We all play with matching drums. You know, we all play the same keyboards on the same keyboard patch. We all played in the same tempo of 120 BPM. Why? Because that was the tempo that the machine came out of the box at, and nobody could be bothered to change it. All that stuff leads you ending up where all music sounds the same, for very obvious reasons. And it's a shame that, to me, it does sound very similar these days, I think, much of the music, because it's all been funneled into this rather tight area.
And if somebody didn't know you, and I went to a younger generation, played all these different songs for them, they wouldn't know that this is all the same drummer. you know, because
Oh,
it's not
well,
in the world where people think like that, where you can go outside of the box. You know what I mean? It's
yeah, I guess you're right. And
and I'm hoping this could be very inspiring to younger artists. And they can go, oh, you know what, this set, you know,
yeah,
there's 70 different songs here, and I'm a drummer. I don't have to be in the back.
no,
I can be as much in the band and as part of the voice of the band as everybody else. You know,
absolutely.
um,
Absolutely. And I would encourage you to do so. You know, I think drummers sometimes are their own worst enemy because they say yes immediately to the first thing that the producer suggests. Hey, why don't you go out there and play 4 beats to the bar on the bass drum and keep a steady thing while we do this song on top of you? Yeah, you can settle for that if you want right away, but there's probably something else you could think of, you know, that would be a little strange thing. Why don't you hit the snare drum every 5th note, not every 4 notes?
right,
You know what I mean? Why don't you
right.
just come out of the box a little bit?
I love when the timing gets kind of wonky on things because you think you got it and then you don't. You know,
Yeah.
you can't get too comfortable. You can't get on the edge because you're like, what's going to happen? I don't know. You know, it's a movie.
Yeah, I think that should be an element of surprise, should be in
Right.
everybody's performance.
With all these different artists and all this different great music on these, what about practicing for you during those times? Do you ever just like say have your own little practice routine as you change? Because you've always been improvising anyhow. How did you keep your chops up yourself, like the muscle memory?
I was a keen practicer. I mean, I worked hard. You know,
Well, clearly,
I didn't just you know, part of the great attraction to about popular music is that it's 3 chords and a backbeat, or 3 chords and the truth, whatever way you want to look at it. And the great thing there is that everybody can do it. So everybody does that, which is fine. But then there are these other irritating fellows like me and Robert Fripp who want to do a bit more. And to do that, you're going to need a bit more technical ability to be able to make some other notes and have things do other things. Robert Fripp to this day is probably the only guitarist I've ever seen doing any practicing.
yeah.
I've never seen guitarists practice, you know.
Oh, really?
Generally not. But I mean, maybe certainly not in dressing rooms. Robert certainly, but most other guys just, you know, they've got the chords and they know what it is. So that's that.
Well, he's been very dedicated.
And I studied hard and worked hard at getting a technique, which I didn't find particularly easy. You know, that age between 15 and 25, when all you do is think, drink, dream, drums. You know,
Yeah.
that's all you're there for on the planet. Nothing else makes any difference at all.
Right.
Girlfriends come and go, but you're kind of dedicated to it. I think at that point, at the end of which you should have some serious musical ability with a bit of luck if you played with enough people.
Which I think plays the fact every time Robert did something, you were back with the band. You were the most consistent member with him.
I was, in a way. I did do King Crimson over 3 or 4 decades.
Right.
Certainly not all the time, of course, but
but
quite a bit. And so it requires a fair shift of thinking every time there's a new band. Oh, what are we going to do this time? We're going to play village music and rock. We're going to do world music. What are we going to do here? You know, so always a surprise.
Yeah, it was a very surprising band. And
yeah.
Robert with his wife now are always doing surprising little Sunday brunch videos. I love that.
I think he's more popular now than he's ever been, for sure.
Yes, he's so serious, but he does this fun. He has fun. It just adds to the flavor of it.
Yeah.
So as far as everybody else goes, this CD set, just get it. It's called, you know, Making a Song and Dance. I encourage everybody to get it. Just want to take this last couple minutes and talk about you actually got a PhD. You've taken some time. You have a great website, and you're also got your YouTube channel going where you're showing people some stuff. We just touch on that a little bit so people know to go check it out. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I think I all I ever want to do really is contribute to drums and drumming.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, and for 41 years I contributed through a pair of sticks, you know, using a pair of sticks, one way or another. I think now I'm more likely to use a pen and write and try to instruct a little bit or show people things, you know. So I've done a fair bit of lecturing, been to university, got a degree and all that, and then I have written academically on the topic of creativity and expert drummers. But more than that, I think littered throughout my website and YouTube channel, there are little, not lessons particularly, they are little witticisms, little lectures, little aphorisms, little ways of looking at life that I think can make drummers different to their other colleagues, make you stand out a little bit from the crowd. So I think it's probably a website and YouTube particularly are useful places to go for getting great ideas. Not that young guys need old guys like me to tell them what to do, but sometimes we had one or two nifty little tricks.
Shortcuts. It's fun to seek out different people, and a different perspective can help shape you to something different.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. I must be terrifying, I imagine, being a 19-year-old drummer, because you look out and all you see is people like me in the way, and so much has been done, and it's been done very, very well by a lot of great guys. But I would encourage young people not to be deterred by that. Bringing your own fresh enthusiasm to things, doing it your way, is really a great move to do. So don't feel you have to be perfect like Steve Gadd. Don't feel you have to be as good as John Bonham. Just get on with it. Note what those people have done and do something different if you can.
Right. I would say there's already been a John Bonham. There's always been a Bill Bruford. We don't need another one.
You don't need another one. I agree.
We only need one. Be you.
Absolutely. Be yourself.
Yeah. That's the best. So all the links for everything is going to be on the show for everybody, the website, YouTube, all the sites, and of course the link to get the box set. I want to thank for being on the show. It's been great.
Sean, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. I think I've taken up quite enough of your time, and good to meet you anyway.
Thank you very much.